What's up, y'all? Thank you for coming out. Can you give yourselves a round of applause? 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. Let's give it up for 5. Hell yeah. I was gonna be like, ooh, it's fall. It's like getting kind of chilly. It's time for spooky season, but it's like hot as hell outside. So just gotta be like, oh yeah, pretend like it's sweater weather, right? So we're gonna get into this vibe. I'm just gonna give a quick level set for any folks who haven't read either of these books quite yet. The Unworthy is a post-apocalyptic novel following a woman in some sort of mysterious cult or a convent or where there are hierarchies of women and one dude at the top. It's composed of these diary entries written in secret by our main character, who, as the book continues, is like, something's not right here. You know? The Buffalo Hunter is a historical vampire novel following a Blackfeet Indian named Goodstab, and it's mostly told through the diary entries of a man named Arthur Bocarn, right? Is that how you say his name? A Lutheran minister who is, not the best dude. Anyway, he and Goodstab have like this conversation about Goodstab's life, and the story unravels from there. So I want to start with the obvious thing, which is the structure and the format of these books. They are both, in some ways, like epistolary novels, novels written through letters, and they both play with the form in some way. In The Unworthy, sometimes the narrator be like, sometimes it'll just like stop, she has to stop writing for whatever reason, and it'll go into that. She's using whatever she can to write, and then in Buffalo Hunter, it's like a diary of a conversation, but it's also like emails, it's like a nesting doll of these like letters to the audience. So I want to ask you both about how did you settle on that form and like the history of the epistolary, novel in horror. Agustina, can I start with you?
Okay. Well, so first of all, thank you so much to the National Book Festival for inviting me. For me, it's an honor to be here. I flew from Buenos Aires, really far away. So thank you so much. Thank you for all the people that are here. Steven, it's a pleasure to be, it's the first time we're meeting in person, but we talk in a live in Instagram, and Andrew, a pleasure. And sorry for my English, if there's some word I don't know. There's people here that speak Spanish, español? Yes. Okay, great. So maybe I will tell, I don't remember this word, and you can just tell it. So thank you. So to answer your question, what I always say is that for me, but not only for me, for Borges too. Borges is one of the greatest authors in Argentina and maybe the world. He says that originality doesn't exist in the sense of the themes are already written, but you can sense originality or something new in the way the story is told. There, for me, in my opinion, you have everything. So this novel will be a very different novel if I wrote it in a third-person narrator, for example. So for me, it's really difficult to know how to write the story. This story occurred to me when I was in Cusco, in Peru. I was invited there to a book festival, and I was in a monastery that now is a museum. I study art history, so of course I love art. And I was looking to a picture, and I turned around, and this monastery wasn't functioning as a monastery. But I turned around and I saw a nun praying there, and I was the only tourist, and I almost died of a heart attack because I was, what is doing the nun there? And I get near the nun, and she was a mannequin. So, like, worst, So I was there, and I said, I have to write about nuns because in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, I was educated, unfortunately, in a nun school. So if you read this book, you will rapidly understand that I didn't have a great experiences with nuns. So I started writing, that was in 2018, and I started writing the book in 2020 because I needed to understand how to write it. So the narrator just came to me, and I think that it's more personal, this first narrator writing a diary, and also when I was a teenager a long time ago, we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, so I write a diary, actually. I have a diary. And you write with different type of pens. Maybe you are drinking something and something spells, se vierte? Yeah, okay. And also, when I write my books, everything is meaning something else. So, for example, this narrator, she strokes the words, and that it's meaning repression, but also it's meaning that their bodies are being stroked, you know? So for me, yeah, it's important the how I'm writing it. And that is why I chose, I didn't choose it, like it came, and I thought this is working, you know?
Interesting. Stephen, how'd you get on your form?
Oh, first, are there any nuns here? No? I've never actually encountered a nun. I wrote my novel, Mongrels, a werewolf novel, and I put a nun transforming into a werewolf in there just because I wanted, that's why I wrote that novel, because I wanted that image of a werewolf in a, what's it called?
And a habit?
Habit, yeah, habit, yeah.
Oh my God, what is the title of that novel?
Mongrels. Oh, my novel?
Yeah.
Mongrels, yeah, werewolf novel.
Okay.
From 9 years ago. Anyways,
It's not the werewolf nun, yeah.
No. Why this novel is epistolary is the same reason my previous novel, I was a teenage slasher, is epistolary. And I wish I had like some high reason, but to tell you the truth, the reason is I don't like copy editing. Well, I don't like it when copy editors tell me, change that comma, you know, spell this right, do the dash like this. And they also are real big on being consistent, you know, like if you did it here like this, you got to do it there like that. And I never feel that, I'm never as certain as they are about all that. And it causes a whole lot of grief in the world. But I've found that if I can write epistolary, then when they say change this comma, I'm like, oh, that's the character, that's not me.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's probably why. I mean, yeah, I wanted to do a nod to, you know, Dracula and Frankenstein and all the big epistolary stuff we've got. I really like epistolary. Epistolary and second person are my two favorite modes to write in. But you can't do that all the time.
No.
So like my next novel coming out is third person. And so I'm going to have to grind through copy editing. I'm not looking forward to the next few months. Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I read The Only Good Indian, and I love when you use the second person.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there are no nuns, but are there any copy editors?
Oh, there's one right there.
Oh, shout out. Watch out, on site. Watch out. All right, so this panel, this talk is called Horror in a Hostile World. Agustina, The Unworthy contains climate change, patriarchy, sexual violence, artificial intelligence. I know you said you wrote it in 2020, so it's like, what was going on in 2020? Like, what was your headspace like writing this? Was there anything happening from the outside world that was making its way into the novel while you're writing it?
Yeah. Maybe the sensation of oppression that the novel has. Well, it's because we were all inside our houses. And also, I always like to clarify that I don't write horror. Like in Argentina, we don't have, as you guys have here in the United States, like our masters, writers. They didn't dedicate themselves to write like a genre. Like, for example, Borges, Cortázar, Silvina Ocampo, and others. Maybe you can find a short story that you could qualify as horror, but we don't have like, maybe now Mariana Enriquez, I don't know if you know her. Yeah, Mariana, and she's the best, like the really great writer, but a really sweet person also. She's like tracing a line of pure horror, but in my case, of course, I write dark books. They're not like romantic novels, but yeah, they're not. Yeah, but for example, now I'm writing a novel that it's 100% Argentinian, with all our slang and insults that are really funny. Some of them. I think that they're filming, so maybe I cannot say an insult, but I will. So there is an insult that I will say it in Spanish and they're trying to translate it that is really difficult, is la concha de la lora. That in English is like the pussy of the parrot. Like, what? So I'm writing that it's a dystopia, so you have an extreme situation, but it's not dark, you know? So I like to explore, and in Argentina, my books in other countries are considered dystopia or ecofeminist, or, you know, like, I like to mix. And maybe, and you know what, before writing this novel, I started writing an erotic novel in 2020, and it was really bad. So I stopped writing it.
So you wrote about nuns. You
Yeah,
the other
so I
way.
went there.
You were like,
Yeah.
that's erotic. Okay.
Yeah.
Stephen, you were teaching a class on vampires before, or when the idea for Buffalo Hunter x Hunter was germinating. So you've had vampires on the mind for a bit. I've heard you say something like you can't write about a creature or monster unless you make sense of it, or something like that. But what about our Western perception of the vampire couldn't you make sense of that you then had to change?
You know, we've been telling vampire stories to ourselves for centuries now. It's one of our oldest monsters. And over those centuries, over all the different tellings, different writers get hold of the vampire, and just as story grease to accelerate some part of their telling, they give this vampire the ability to fly, to turn to mist, to do telepathy, to cover up neck holes with saliva. There's so many different characteristics that vampires have it's accreted to the vampire over the centuries. And if that story works, then there's a good chance that story grease gets encoded into the vampire. And the result is that after all these centuries, the vampire doesn't really make sense to me as a creature that might have evolved. Its characteristics seem to not complement each other. It doesn't seem like the efficient way nature would work. And so, yeah, for me to write about a monster, whether it's a werewolf or a vampire or a merman, I guess, either, which I want to do someday, I have to generally strip everything off of it and then build it back up in a way that it makes sense to me. Because if I'm going to invest in this creature intellectually, emotionally for 300, 400, 500 pages, and if it doesn't make sense, that's going to blow the story up every 10 pages. And I'm not saying blow-ups aren't good. Blow-ups are great in fiction, but too many blow-ups and it falls apart. You know, so I like, I just like to. It's not that I dislike the conventional vampire that we've inherited. It's super, super fun. It's just I, as a writer, can't manage a creature with all of those disparate qualities stuck to it.
Did any Blackfeet myths or stories influence your version of the vampire?
Not really. We do have a person eater, which is not really a vampire. So no, not really. But you know, people. You were talking about Tlingit Indians. People always ask me that same question about the Tlingit Indians. They say, "Did you write that from a deer lady tradition, especially since reservation dogs, right?" Mm-hmm. And I never really do that. I mean, I wouldn't have done it with Buffalo Hunter x Hunter, and I didn't do it with Good Indians. With Good Indians, I wanted to write a Jason Voorhees Friday the 13th novel, but I talked to an entertainment lawyer, and he said, "I don't have rights to that mask." And I thought, well, I'll just change the mask, you know. And so that's why it's got an elk head instead of a hockey mask. And similarly in Buffalo Hunter x Hunter, I didn't draw upon anything. I don't know. I don't think I could. I think I would feel like I was selling my culture if I did that. I'm not saying other people can't do that. I think other people get away with it just fine. But for me and the way I work and do stuff, I need to be able to crawl inside a story and pull it here and change it there and make it not resemble what it used to be. And I'm afraid that if I were to use one of the old stories, I might feel kind of hemmed in, you know?
Interesting. It's almost dinner time, so I want to talk about eating for a bit. In this book, we'll get to the other book, don't worry, I say it. In this book, there's like a lot to do about crickets, right? Yeah. There's lots of, they're eating. There's some memorable scenes about eating. Actually, I won't spoil it for those. There's a lot of eating in this book too. And Agustina, you're tender as the flesh. There's a couple dining out scenes, right? What draws you to this theme of consumption?
Well, it's a great question. I'm Argentinian, you know, and we love to eat. Like really, we have really, really good quality of food. And also we have, like I think in all Latin America, like these traditions to get together with your family and have barbecues on Sunday. Uh, and yeah, actually, the love for each other is transmitted with food also. So a lot of Argentinians and Latin American people love to cook, for example. And I think that, of course, food is so important. And if I'm in the end of the world, I will think about that. And in this case, with the crickets, I searched what to eat instead of meat. And I don't know if you know this, but in Mexico, they have cricket farms, and they are producing harinas, flour, thank you. They're producing flours with the crickets, for example. So I really searched about that, and I thought that it was a good way of replacing, I don't know, meat, for example. And well, with Tender is a Flesh, what can I say?
I don't know, what can you say? There's a lot of eating. They be eating in that book.
Like, yeah, we are animals. We forget about that little detail, and we are made of meat. And since I live in Argentina, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, it's really difficult. Maybe not now, but at the time I was a vegetarian, it was really difficult. And I thought, I had like really naturalized eating of meat, and I denaturalized it, and I understood that the meat that we eat, it has to do a lot with traditions, because, for example, in Argentina, we eat the meat of pig, cow, and chicken. But in other countries, for example, in India, a lot of people, they don't eat cow because they think that it's sacred. Or in China, they eat dogs and cats. And in Argentina, we have them as our family. I have my cat's tattoo here, so I will never eat them. So I thought, okay, if we are meat, we could be hanging there in the butcher's shop, and we could legalize cannibalism, you know? So yeah, I'm obsessed with eating.
Speaking of eating, Stephen, so I've actually just finished reading Interview with the Vampire, the Anne Rice book, and I'm working through this idea of that book sort of solidifying in our common culture of thinking like vampires as like horny, like vampires as erotic, vampires as, and a sexual thing of they're like sucking with the blood. And I get very little of that from your book. It's not, and I feel like you use the phrase like eating more, like, or feeding more than you do like sucking or anything. Was that like a conscious effort to like break away from the inherent eroticism of vampiry?
It was, yes. To me, vampires, to a vampire, sex is biting. That's how, I mean, reproduction is biting. Maybe I should say that. You know, that's how they transmit their infection themselves. If they want to have a bigger family, they'd bite a lot of people, you know, or more competition or whatever it is. But yeah, the sexy vampire, to me, that makes the vampire attractive. It makes people think, hey, what if I was a vampire? You know, I could not wear a shirt to the club and dance and have a great time. You know, I don't know, and I think vampirism should always be a curse. It should not be something you want. It should only be bad. The idea of, like, what's that film? Seeking, Consenting, Suicidal Person. Is that right? That's the title. I like that film a lot. But towards the end, there's a couple of people considering becoming vampires, and one of them says, "We'll be vampires. We can do anything." And that's kind of my problem with being a vampire. I don't think it should be like, I want superpowers. You know, it should be like, I'm burdened with this terrible curse. How am I going to navigate living now?
There's, on this sort of same eroticism note though, like I know you said you had dumped, you were in the middle of writing an erotic novel and then you trashed it, but is there something when it comes to eating and like the mouth-feeliness nature of it, do you think like when you were writing like Tender is the Flesh, was there something inherently sexual about the consumption process?
Well, I can say that in all my books, even in the book that I'm writing now, I have scenes with the sex because, of course, I love sex. Yeah.
Shout out,
Yeah, of course. But also because the technique for me to write in scene sex is so difficult that for me it's a challenge. So, for example, in Tender is the Flesh, I always tell this little story at schools because in Argentina they teach Tender is the Flesh. I don't know why, but they do.
Like
in
what
a
age?
lot of
What
schools.
grade?
What?
What grade?
The last one.
Okay, it's like high school.
Like more or less 16, 17 years
okay,
old.
all right.
Yeah. So in Tender is the Flesh, for the people that didn't read it, you have a sex scene with two characters, the main character and another character I won't tell, but it's only 3 pages. And I read 5 books just to know how to write the word penis. Like in Argentina, in Spanish, you can, of course, you have a lot of ways of calling penis. There is, I will tell in Spanish, one of the words that is socotroco. Like, if you write socotroco, just the sound is funny. It's like stupid to read a book and find the word socotroco as penis, you know, like no. So for me, it's also really important the way the words sound. So I needed to find the exact word. So I read that 5 books only to decide not to use the word. So, and here, for example, the sex scene, it's more poetic. So I'm suggesting, and I'm not telling a lot. I use a lot of metaphors. And in the new novel, it's out there. Like I use penis like all the time and everything like, you know, because the way I'm going to tell the story, for me, it has to say something, you know? So, yeah.
She told me that there's pictures in the margins too. But no, sex scenes are tricky.
Yeah.
I think sex scenes and fight scenes are really the same scenes. It's just different amounts of clothing, basically. But you have to have more going on than just the sex or just the punches. You know, if there's not more at stake, then why are you even doing it? I think. You know, in my first novel, I put a sex scene, but I was really timid. I did not have any idea how to do it, and I thought, you know, I'll dress it up. And the way I dressed it up was I had them play like they were dark crystal creatures. Like Skeksis, those vultures, Skeksis, and the other ones, the armadillo-looking ones. And so when they get together in the back of the van, they're playing Dark Crystal, you know. And I don't think it worked really.
Yeah, because you could be like really corny. You say
Corny.
Yeah. Corny or really pornographic. So you have to find like the tone.
Yeah.
If you want to be, in my opinion, if you want to be pornographic, like you have to go all the way, you know. So yeah, it's tricky.
The trick, like probably 4 out of every 5 sex scenes I read in a book, I feel like this writer is kind of just nudging me in the ribs and saying, look, I know what goes where, you know? And
Yeah. It's like like a virgin high school, like, I've had it before, I swear. Yeah. But does the same go for when writing about gore, like, how do you know when you're hitting that corny line versus when you're being cartoony versus when you're being visceral? Either one of you guys.
I think it's, if you feel revulsed yourself, then you've probably gone far enough, but you should try to go about 10% farther. That's what I do. Like, I did this one novel, Least of My Scars, that I lost 20 to 25 pounds while I wrote it because I was so grossed out the whole time I was writing it. And it's got some bad stuff that goes on in there, but I wanted to see, like, if you want to know how far you can go, then you've got to push it, you know? You've got to see how far you can go and then make yourself go a little bit farther just to know. I think it's really important to know what you can and can't do, but the only way to know that is to push it.
Yeah.
And so I tried to push it.
Yeah, I agree. And at the same time, when I write, I'm really cold. Like a lot of people ask me when I was writing Tender is the Flesh if I feel something or whatever, and I say no, because I have to create a world that for the reader it's real, and I have to use the words that are artificial. So for me, it's really difficult to do that. And I also work a lot with my intuition and with my body. And if I feel that that is okay, I will go that way. Like, I won't spoil, but there is a scene in Tender is the Flesh with some puppies. And yeah, my best friend, she sent me a message and she just insulted me all along the message because of that scene. And sometimes they ask me if I think about the readers, and I don't. Sorry. I mean, I appreciate the readers, that is why I'm here, but I don't, because if I think about each reader, I don't want readers to, and this happened with Tender is the Flesh, to have nausea, to faint. There was a reader that fainted, to have nightmares. With this book, with The Unworthy, a reader just came to a signing and she just cried and cried and she couldn't talk. I don't want that. But at the same time, I have to respect my view and the story. And if I have to do something to a puppy, I will do it, you know? Sorry.
Yeah. You know, I did a reading in Los Angeles somewhere a few years ago, and while I was reading this story, which was about cannibalism, someone passed out, and I just thought, I finally made it. You know?
Count that a win, yeah. All right, so we did gore, we did sex.
Well,
Let's talk about religion.
yeah.
Yeah, that's next on the list. So yeah, you mentioned this is from The Unworthy was inspired by your time in it was a Catholic school, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing. There's a phrase that they repeat in this book. They say, "Without faith, there is no refuge."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hope this is. I don't think this is spoiling it. It's like maybe their faith is like misplaced. But I don't know if they're wrong. If that phrase is wrong, like, can you talk to me a little bit about your thinking about having the people in the convent sort of repeat this specific phrase over and over again?
Yeah, I can tell you this. I don't believe in religions, but I do believe that there's something that created us, and we are all detachments of that something that you can call God or goddess or whatever you want to call. And we are not only humans, we are detachments of that energy, but also animals and also nature. So this book, I think it's talking about love as an energy force, not only romantic. And I think that energy, or God or goddess or whatever, it's pure love. So what I try to work in this book is about, of course, a cult, because this is inspired in Catholic religion, but it's not Catholic religion. It is a cult. And one of the things that I studied when I started studying cults, and by the way, there are a lot of documentaries in different platforms with a lot of cults here in the United States. I don't know if you know that, but there are like a lot of them. Because in Argentina, of course, we have cults, but maybe no one did a documentary about that.
So we have more documentarians than cult leaders.
Yes. And I couldn't believe it. Like, people think about the most strange things, but I try to understand why someone maybe intelligent or with education or whatever can be captive of a cult. And one of the things you have to be is vulnerable.
Born vulnerable.
Yeah, you understand? Vulnerable. I am not pronouncing it well.
You got it.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you have to be in that situation, and there are a lot of mechanisms to capture your mind. You know, you have to be there. and you have to impart fear, thank you. You have to impart fear, and also these phrases, like mantras, they take you to a mental state, you know, in religions that are not cold and they're not trying to abuse you. You connect with that energy with these mantras, you know? Like, for example, in Buddhist religion, you connect with that mantras. So, yeah, I try to work with that, you know, with these permanent phrases that connect. In this case, they want you to connect with a God that maybe keeps all the contamination out. But the thing that I'm working to go to the beginning is, where is that God? That God is really there, or that God is in the writing, in the connection with human, animals, and nature? I won't tell. You can read the book.
Yeah. Stephen, I grew up Lutheran, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And so when I saw that author Morcone was Lutheran, I was like, hell yeah, representation matters, dude. We got one of us. Even though he's like not the best dude, right? I was like, oh, we got one. We got one. Can you talk a little bit about researching that aspect? Not just like Lutheranism in general, but like oldie-timey Lutheranism, and like going back in time and seeing how that works.
First of all, I should say I don't know much about religion, and so when I saw myself getting to the end of the Etsy opening of Buffalo Hunter, I knew there was a preacher part coming, and I was like, preacher, pastor, priest, brother? I couldn't figure out what the difference was in all those, and so then I realized, oh no, this dude's got to be some certain denomination, and that was a bummer. And so I was trying to do searches like, what priests wear those long black robes? Because I wanted the long black robes, you know? And I found Jesuits. Jesuits were great, but then I looked up what churches were standing in Miles City, Montana, where this is set in 1912, and there was just the Lutheran Church, and I thought, dude's Lutheran, you know? And then I read the Book of Concord, I think it is, and I didn't read it all. I didn't read it like you're supposed to read it. I just read it to find cool things about blood and that kind of stuff. But that's why you do it. That's why you do research. And I was telling my wife that I keep running into this wall of not knowing Lutheran stuff. And while I was writing the novel, and she said, one of our good friends is a Lutheran pastor. And I was like, it was like a Batman Bruce Wayne moment. I'm like, they do that? You know, I had no idea. And you know, lo and behold, and so I thought, all right, I'm going to write this book, then I'm going to go ask her I'm going to have her read it and tell me all the Lutheran stuff that I did wrong so I can get it right. But then it came time to do that, and I realized that since Arthur Bocarn maybe isn't the most wholesome dude, that me presenting a Lutheran pastor as what he is and giving it to a Lutheran pastor might make for some awkward dinners, you know? And also, I just felt, I'm not Lutheran, so I feel a little bit, I don't know if dishonest is the right word, but I feel like a thief, you know, like I'm sneaking in and stealing something. And I feel a little guilty about it, I guess. But turns out another one of my friends is Lutheran. I had no idea he was Lutheran. There's Lutherans everywhere. And he
we out here.
He read the book and he told me, he said, you got Lutheranism spot on, because we're all about like, what do you call it, where everybody like brings food and you all eat a little bit of this and a little bit of that? Like, potluck, yeah. Like he said Lutherans are all about that. So your pastor being really having a sweet tooth, you know, makes a lot of sense. And so that's just like providence. That's not me being a good researcher. You know?
I think that's more of a Midwest thing than a Lutheran thing. But, you know, it's funny. So, you know, when I asked about the Blackfeet thing, you were like tenuous about like, oh, I feel like a thief, or you didn't want to use it, and same thing with the Lutheran stuff. Yeah. But you went ahead and done with the Lutheran stuff anyway. And it's like, what does that feel like? Do you not, when you're like, I'm guessing it's like, what are you so apprehensive about? What do you feel?
Oh, I'm apprehensive about offending someone, about presenting them poorly, representing them poorly. Like Killer on the Road, this novel I just did, came out in July, I think. It's about truckers, or it's got a lot of trucking stuff in it. And I really did not want to make truckers mad because those rigs they drive are ginormous, you know. And I've watched BJ and the Bear; they can come through the wall at any moment, you know. So I wanted to get as many of those details right as I could. So I watched endless hours of YouTube. There's a lot of like videos on YouTube. They call them CB interviews, I think. It's just truckers driving across the country talking to somebody on a CB, and there's a little like lipstick camera that watches them, and it's boring to an extent, but. I watched a lot of those. I read all the trucking stuff I could find. There's one good trucking book I read. And then I went down to this place where a lot of trucks parked, and when nobody was around, I'd crawl all over the trucks and try to figure out how stuff plugged in and everything. And I've had family members who are truckers, and I've gone on runs with them. That was helpful. But I just don't want to represent poorly. But at the same time, I should not say that I like research. I do not like research. Don't get me wrong, I love libraries. Libraries are the best. Yeah. But every time I have to research something, I'm like, dude, why don't you just be a better liar, you know? But I can't lie about like which is the air hose, which is the brake hose. You know, I have to know which color is which. I can't just make up colors. So sometimes I do have to look stuff up. For Buffalo Hunter though, there was a lot of research because I don't know 1912, of course, and I wasn't around in 1870, the Marias Massacre, and I don't speak Blackfoot either, but. When I hit that wall of I need to know some stuff, instead of doing the research myself, I just called up friends who have written books on all this stuff and who know the language and teach the language, and I said, hey, y'all, send me all your junk. And they sent me all their junk, and that was research, you know?
Does that sort of trepidation, do you feel that when you're writing? Like, do you feel this weight about, like, oh, gotta make sure, like,
no, I'm really nerdy. I study art history in the University of Buenos Aires. And the other students, ask me for my drafts.
Oh,
no.
Your early drafts?
No. When you take notes in a class, like they asked me for that because I'm really, really nerdy. And for Tender is the Flesh, I researched without even writing a word 6 months about cannibalism, of course, and about the rights of animals, and about how slaughterhouse works, although in Tender is the Flesh, they're slaughtering humans, and I think that there is no slaughtering humans in our reality, like it doesn't exist a place where they slaughter humans.
To sell for meat, for consumption.
Yeah. Like just in our reality, I don't think it exists. So I could just invent it, whatever, about that, but I didn't because I think it's more terrible to think that we have all the machinery and all the procedures to slaughter humans because we are slaughtering other animals. So people that read the book and work with slaughterhouse or they work with the meat, they told me it was precise, although I couldn't go to a slaughterhouse because I don't have the contacts, I think. So yeah, I'm really obsessed when I'm writing, and I even research, I don't know, every little detail, because one of the things for me in literature that it's most important is plausibility. And when I'm reading works of others, I get really mad if something is not plausible. Like my friends, they don't want to give me books because I'm really dense. Because I work with books every day, you know, so I read a lot. So I pretend that for my books, like I work every detail, yeah.
Man, you should have called me for Tender is the Flesh. You and I could have gotten into a cow suit and snuck in.
Yeah.
You know?
Now I know.
Yeah. Oh, but you know, I was watching or reading something in the last few months. I forget, and it was a journalist or a documentarian, someone speaking. They were going around to all the people who had been convicted of cannibalism, and they were trying to figure out, you know, what's it taste like, what's it smell like, and what they said was the consensus they got was cooking human flesh. The closest smell we have to that is when you very first peel the top off a tube of barbecue Pringles. That's what it smells like.
Wow. Yeah, I read that. Like for some people, it's like salmon, like a little heavy salmon.
That's good.
But I think each human should taste different. But I don't know.
Like regret and.
I don't actually know.
If anybody knows, just let me know.
Yeah,
right?
you can say.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a couple quick questions, but if you guys have any, if you want to start like lining up to ask these folks some questions, you know the deal. Make it a question and a comment, and be cool and all that stuff. I'm just doing a couple quick ones.
Oh my God, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, all right. I'll do these two quick ones. Steven, do you have any favorite werewolf movies?
My favorite werewolf movie is Ginger Snaps. Yes.
For folks who don't know what it is, can you tell me?
Ginger Snaps is two sisters in high school. They're not loved in high school, but when one of them becomes a werewolf, it's a key to popularity.
Oh, nice. And then, Agustina, is there a fictional dystopian world that you actually wouldn't mind living in?
Oh my God, dystopian?
Or, yeah.
No, I just want to I don't know if leave, but I would love to have written a novel, a short novel, written by an Argentine author. His name is Rafael Pinedo, and the novel, it's called Frío in Spanish, cold in English. And unfortunately, he died really young, so he left only 2 books. But that novel, it's like, I want to write like that,
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We'll start over here.
Hi, sorry, this is just for Agustina, but my understanding is the same person has translated all of your books into English. So I was curious, like, what that relationship is like, especially and like how involved you are, because there's so many different languages that your books are translated to. So it seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I love Sarah. Sarah Moses is a translator. And since I know some English, it's the only translation I could help, or I could, whatever, I don't know, be involved. And it got to the point that now, with the Unworthy, when I wrote the first draft, of course in Spanish, I asked her to read the draft and to tell me what she thought about it. So now for me, she's a really important reader that I go to when I need an opinion, because I think she's a really great reader. And also, I wrote a short story for a collection that will be published here in the United States with Mariana Enriquez and Mónica Ojeda. Mónica Ojeda is Ecuadorian, how you say, from Ecuador, a writer that she's amazing. And I wrote this short story only for that collection, so it's completely unpublished. And I sent the short story to Sarah just for her to tell me, and then they booked her for translating the short story. So I love her. Like, I don't know if we're friends, but we have a really, really close relationship. Yeah, she's amazing.
Thank you.
Great. We'll go over here.
Hi. Mr. Jones, did you grow up on the res?
I did not. I grew up in West Texas. I thought I was the only Blackfeet in the world.
Well, I grew up on the res, and isolation is always something that I look for in books, because I just really enjoy reading about it. I was just wondering if, you ever thought about including that in a book, because it's something that could bring into a psychological aspect of it, too.
I think isolation, especially for horror, is almost necessary, actually, because you have to cut people off from help. And they have to rely on themselves, their wits, their abilities, their suspicions and everything. But in a more general sense, no, I didn't grow up on the Blackfeet Reservation, but I grew up in West Texas in a place so small we didn't even have a post office. The church and the school were on the same grounds. You'd kick the kickball over the fence and have to go step through headstones to get it, It was that kind of place. And we felt quite isolated from the world. And when I talked to my wife, who's my age, she grew up in Houston, which was connected to the world. We find that all the music got to her about a decade before it got to me.
Wow.
We'll go over here.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is actually for both of you. What books or authors do you really love to read for yourself that you think would surprise your fans to hear that you're enthusiastic about?
That would surprise. That's a good question.
I can tell you that from Argentina, my favorite author, it's Juan José Saer is the name. He's dead, unfortunately, but I really study his work. Like, if I read a novel, I need to reread it and reread it because I try to understand the magic of the novel. But from here, from the United States, I have a lot of authors I also study, like Shirley Jackson, like, of course, Stephen King, which I love. Also Toni Morrison, also William Faulkner.
It falls down when you said Faulkner. Morrison
What?
went up, and then when you said Faulkner,
Sorry?
when you said Toni Morrison, everyone was like, oh, yeah. And then when you said Faulkner, it was like, oh, I'm cool.
Why?
Just kidding.
Like, he's amazing, you know? As I lay down
As I lay dying.
like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that novel, my God. So, yeah, I have a lot of other authors, like Virginia Woolf, like Jamaica Kincaid. Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm really nerd. Yeah.
You know, I was on a phone call with Faulkner's estate once, and I was talking to someone who knew Faulkner when he was alive, and there came a point in conversation where I said, well, we all agree that Faulkner was a racist, right? And that did not go over well.
Oh, now I understand why Toni Morrison and then, yeah, sorry. I didn't, yeah.
But,
Yeah, you know, but.
what would surprise people about my reading? I think I read probably 40–50% of what I read is paleoanthropology. I can read that forever. I always think I'm going to figure out why Neanderthals died. It's going to be this novelist from Colorado who's going to crack that. Nobody else has. And also, I'll watch just about any romantic comedy that comes down. I love romantic comedies. I think when a romantic comedy works, it probably works better than anything. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is about monster horror. I'm a huge fan of monster horror, and I know it's had its golden ages. I was curious to hear your thoughts on where you see that genre going, or where you would like to see it going.
I guess the monster horror that doesn't work for me, which is to say it's the monster horror that I hope doesn't become what we're doing all, is when the monster can be reduced to a metaphor that's never as fun to me. Because I think, why not just write what you think instead of dressing it up in scales and fangs and wings and all that stuff? You know, I mean, I understand you got to put icing on the cake to make people eat it. That makes a lot of sense. But when a monster can be, when you can explain a monster by saying it is this metaphor, I'm trying to say this other thing, then it kind of just erases that monster to me. And I want the monster to stay. I want the monster to keep lumbering around and biting people.
So for you, in that icing metaphor, the metaphor is the icing and the cake is the monster.
No. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I really got that one wrong. Yeah,
For me, the icing is the entertainment. It's the fun, the schlock, the pulp. It's the genre wrapper, basically, is the icing.
Okay.
And the metaphor is the dry cake inside.
I see. Okay. So you want less cake?
I do. I want all icing.
Less cake, more. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Can we go over?
Hi, I just want to say, first of all, huge fan of both of your writing. Tenders of Flesh is maybe the most messed up book I've ever read, and that is the highest compliment of which I'm capable. So I have a question for Stephen. You talked a little bit about the epistolary format, but what made you go for a double epistolary format? Because it's a double-framed narrative, and I always wondered why you made that choice, if there was a reason for like the emails.
Yeah, it's probably, it's all nested within itself, a Russian nesting doll, whatever you want to call it. I think it's because I've always liked worship at the altar of Philip K. Dick. And he always has nested narrative. So does Joseph Conrad, actually. And John Barth does it a lot. There's a long history of those. And I don't know if I've ever read a nested narrative I did not like, because what I love is that every time you go from this level to this level of the story, you climb like a little bridge of uncertainty. And I love uncertainty. I think uncertainty is so important for storytelling.
Thank you.
This question is for Agustina. Stephen already kind of answered it, but you mentioned that you love researching, or that you're obsessed with researching before you write something. how do you know when you've learned enough to feel comfortable writing about it?
Oh my God, I don't know.
For me, I could spend that 6 months and turn it
Yes.
into a year
Yes.
researching cannibalism. So just like, how do you know that you've got it before you start writing?
You know, maybe when I know how to write the story, when I have like enough pieces in my mind, and also as I told before, I really listen to my body. For example, the last sentence of Tender is the Flesh, there is a word, I won't spoil, but there is a word that is human, and I wrote another word, but I didn't work. And I thought of that word for 1 week, like I have to replace this word, that it was demented. It wasn't human, it was demented, the word. And I was like for a week thinking about, and when I thought human, I felt like something has struck me in my body, and I said, this is the word. And one word can change all the meaning of the novel, you know? So sometimes it's like you have to listen to your, I don't know, unconscious, yeah. Okay.
I was going to ask you a question about interpreting and translating as well, but I won't belabor the point, so I'll be selfish. Tender is the Flesh was the most popular book in the book club I'm in.
Oh.
And we had a fierce debate over, I don't want to spoil it, so when there's 2 prospective employees that the main character judges, was it your intention that when the boss asked him to check him out, he was always supposed to be looking for the qualities that the employee that was not hired had? Or was he looking for what you kind of implied in the one that he offered the job to?
Your question is really complex.
That's all right.
Like I wrote it a long time ago and I don't remember like the details. I don't know. I have to think about it. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Maybe later, like you could tell me the question again because, sorry, I didn't understand it.
Hey y'all, my question is specifically for Agustina. I also had a hard time in Catholic school, it was horrible.
Oh, sorry.
That's, whomst among us. But one of the things I really enjoyed about The Unworthy that felt really special for a book that was so disturbing was like a very special love relationship.
Yes.
I'm thinking Cersei, and
yes.
It took my breath away and made me very distraught. I'm wondering if, especially in the Catholic Church where it's easy to be very cynical about love, what do you think love's place in horror is, or in these kinds of novels?
Well, first of all, and this is not a spoil, or yes, but it doesn't matter, Circe, it's a cat, and it's my cat, Lola. That I love her, and I have her tattoo here. And first I want to name her Circe, but my husband told me no. So I named her Lola Mora. That is the name of a really important sculptor in Argentina. She was one of the first female sculptors. And afterwards, a reader told me that she named her cat Circe because of the novel, and I told my husband this, and he said, that is a great name. I was like, what? So I think that, I work with as I told before, like with the energy of love. And I think that it's the most important energy in the world. Like, as I told before, for me, that is God. You know, when you have empathy for others, not only humans, but also animals, but also nature. That is why she has, and I'm not going to spoil, this relationship with the woods. You are connecting with that energy with God. So, although the word love, it's never written in this novel, I work with that all the time here. You're welcome.
Hi, this is for Stephen. Thank you so much. I love your work. I had kind of a question about your characters. I feel like in all of your books, your characters are just so fascinating and so like multifaceted, kind of depraved sometimes. And like they always have, and even like when terrible things happen to them, you kind of want to root for them, especially kind of like Jade or Lewis. and they really just stick with you.
Thank you.
I'm just kind of wondering how you like create and craft these characters that really stick with the readers and make you just want to root for them and make you want them to win.
You know, I wish I could like say that I crafted them, but I feel like really what happens is I just want to write a story that has an El Camino in it, and then while I'm trying to look at the El Camino, somebody is raising their hand and saying my turn, and it's Jade or it's Letha or it's some of those characters, Lewis, and so then I'm like, well, maybe you're my avenue to the El Camino, you know. So I'd better make you real, and to me, what making them real means is they're not all good, they're not all bad. They've got regrets, they've got desires, and they want something, I guess, you know. And maybe they can't articulate it to themselves quite, but so that's not really an answer. I'm just like stalling until I think of something. I really don't. I wish, like, I know other writers will do little exercises where they figure out who their character is. They know what they did at their 12th birthday party. They know what they think of their dad when they're 16, all that stuff. That's wonderful and great, but I just like blunder into things and try to delete the stuff that doesn't work, basically, you know?
No, I like that. Thank you.
But yeah.
Thank you so much.
This question is for Agustina. Earlier in the lecture, you mentioned you enjoyed themes of feminism, and I'd like to know what motivates you to weave those feminist themes into your books.
Because I'm a woman and we live in patriarchy, like, yeah. Not only, thank you, but not only living in Latin America, it's difficult, although I have a lot of privilege, because anything can happen to you anywhere. This happened to me in Mexico. I was traveling from Cancun from Tulum to Cancun by car. And I rented a car to travel with other tourists because I was alone, but I traveled alone. And I started talking with the driver. And at one point, a police car started chasing us. And I asked him, why is that police car chasing us? And he answered me this: I won't stop because we did nothing wrong. And if I stop, I don't know what can happen to you. So I'm here because of that man, honestly, the honest man, but there are a lot of women that cannot tell the story because they're raped and killed, you know? And not only that, all around the world, in Italy, there is a group, a Facebook group or whatever, that shared the photos of men sharing the photos of their partners and girlfriends. In Germany, a group of men sharing tips of how to rape women. And what happened in France with the case of Giselle Pericot, her husband raping her. So I don't understand why we're still in the patriarchy. Like, come on. I mean, I'm only asking, don't rape us and kill us, you know?
Thank you. It's a great answer.
I think we have time for one more, if it's a fast one.
All right, I'm gonna be quick, but I just wanted to comment on, like, Agustina, you said that you don't know why they study your book in schools, but as an anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist, reading your book, I just analyze stuff like ritual, cannibalism, the changing of the word meat to special meat, and even like violence, power. Those are things that people are probably studying with your books for that. So just so you know why people are investigating more. And Mr. Jones, just so you know, as an anthropologist, I study physical anthropology. One of the theories of the Neanderthals like disappearing is natural selection, but also war with Homo sapiens. So you can go with that. But my question is to Agustina. If Tenders of Flesh or Las Indignas could be adapted to a TV show, what would you like to stay unique to your book that can be reflected to the show or movie?
Oh my God, it's a really difficult question because I just learned that you have to let it go. Like, you cannot control everything. And what happened with Gender is the Flesh is that it had more than 100 petitions to be filmed, and we gave the rights to a Mexican producers, and they're not going to do nothing at all. I have to wait for the rights to just, go away. you know? So sometimes this happens, but I don't know, it's a question of negotiating, because Tenderness of Flesh, when you read it, maybe you think it's really easy to take to the big screen, but it's not, because one thing is imagining slaughtering a human, and another thing is to see it on a, you know?
On a
yeah.
big screen.
So maybe that but it's difficult. They respect like this not so explicit thing, but well, I don't know. I hope they film it someday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
speaking
you.
of control, I'm being told to wrap it up. So, Agustina, Stephen, thank you so much. Shout out
Thank
to you
you.
guys. Thank you.